Milkweed Chapter 5. Good morning, chickadillos. Sit back and relax. Chapter 5. Autumn. Soon the airplanes came, adding their waspy buzz to the music. I wanted to see them, but Yuri would not let me go outside. "Why can't we go out?" I said. "They're dropping bombs," he said. I thought, this is what the enemy does? He flies overhead in his airplane. If he sees you in the street below, he reaches up and drops a bomb in your head? I pictured bombs as black iron balls about the size of sauerkraut kettles. Every day the sirens screamed to tell us the bombs were coming. We stayed in the cellar and went out at night. That's when I learned the reality of bombs. Beyond the rooftops, the city was on fire. It looked like the sun was stuck. Those were the days and the nights. On some nights we were a city of two. We did not have to snatch. We simply walked into the empty shops of bakers and butchers and grocers, took whatever we pleased, and walked out and walked home. We didn't run. The street lights were out. Sometimes at night we went to the stable, and the others were there. Everyone put food into a big pile. We wrestled in the food before we ate it. We clubbed each other blindly with arm-long sausages. Cigarette tips glowed orange in the dark. The horses were gone. The stablemen never came shouting any more. Then one day the sirens were silent. Yuri and I were home in our basement, and Yuri said, "Stay here." He went outside, and when he came back he said, "Let's go." He stuffed a cheese into his pocket and one into mine, and we went up through the barber shop and into the street. We walked fast. I could not keep up. Yuri took my hand and pulled me. People were out. They were heading the way we were heading. We passed the black, twisted skeletons of streetcars, and sometimes we had to trot down the middle of the street because the walls of buildings had crumbled and spilled over the sidewalks. Stacks of sandbags were everywhere. People were hurrying. Machine guns looked to me like praying mantises. Airplanes flew overhead, but no bombs fell from them. I saw someone running. That was all I needed. I couldn't walk if someone else was running. I broke loose from Yuri. Others were running. It was a race. I didn't know where the finish line was, but I was determined to win. Many had shouted, "Stop!" but no one ever caught me. The street was getting more and more crowded as people poured into it. I sneaked through the crowds. I passed other runners. I didn't care how many there were. I would beat them all. I laughed as I ran. And then I was aware of a noise. I felt it before I heard it. It was a deep and grumbling, and it seemed to come from beneath the streets. And then there was another sound. It was like the beat of a great drum. Boom, boom. Or maybe 1,000 drums. And the more I ran, the louder it became. And now the people were mobbed, piled like bombed bricks. The spaces between them gone. But I found spaces. I always found space. And I darted through them, and I could taste the finish line. And suddenly I broke free, and I burst out of the mob, and I was in nothing but space. And the drum beat was deafening. "I won!" I shouted, and I threw up my hands in victory. And then something hit me on the ear, and it was on the ground, and the drum beat was rolling over me, and I looked up, and I saw boots. The tallest, blackest, shiniest boots I had ever seen. Endless columns of boots. And for an instant, I saw my gaping face in one of them. I knew what I must be seeing. Yuri had spoken often of them, and I gasped aloud, "Jackboots." They were magnificent. There were men attached to the boots, but it was as if the boots were wearing the men. They did not walk like ordinary footwear, the boots, I mean. When one stood at tall, stiff attention, the other swung straight out till it was so high I could have walked under it. Only then did it return to the earth as the other took off, and 1,000 of them swinging up at once, falling like the footstep of a single 1,000-footed giant, and leaves leaped. The parade of jackboots went on forever and ever, and Yuri told me later that the street of the parade was so wonderful, so wonderfully wide, it was not even called a street. It was called a boulevard. And then I was in the air. A hand had hoisted me up, and I was dangling above the street and returned to my feet. And a soldier was smiling down at me, and his boots came all the way up to my shoulder. and his gray uniform was piped and spangled with silver. The brim of his hat was black and shiny like the boots, and above it glistened a silver bird that I knew the boys in the stable would have loved to steal. The soldier smiled down at me, and he mussed my hair and pinched my cheek. "Tiny little Jew," he said. "Happy to see us, are you?" "I'm not a Jew," I told him. I held up my yellow stone. "I'm a gypsy." My reply delighted him. "Ah, so a gypsy. Good, very good." And he took me under both arms and lifted me and deposited me back on the sidewalk at the front of the crowd. "Good day to you, little gypsy," he said. And then the smile left his face and he stood tall, and the heels of the boots snapped together with a clack, and he saluted me and marched off. The march of the jackboots went on, and after a while Yuri found me. "Look," I said, "the jackboots!" I thought he would cheer, but he didn't. He stood behind me with his hands on my shoulders, and I looked at the faces of the crowd. Nobody was cheering. Nobody was smiling. I was surprised. Weren't they thrilled by the spectacle before them? And now the deep grumbling was getting louder and beginning to overcome the drumbeat of the jackboots, and I always looked to the sky for thunder, but this thunder was coming from beneath my feet, and the street itself was trembling, and then I saw them. "Yuri!" I cried. "Thanks," he said. Colossal, gray, long-snouted beetles. The tanks roared up the boulevard 4x4, and the sky shook on its hinges. And I saw at once how silly it had been to try to stop them with ditches and sandbags and machine guns. I clamped my hands over my ears, and a single white flower flew out of the crowd. It bounced from the iron flank of a tank, and then it broke into petals. I had no flower to throw, so I threw my cheese. Chapter 6. Yuri and I walked outside the next morning to see how it was different. The tanks were gone. The jackboots were strolling about just like us. They looked at the people and spoke to each other. I couldn't stop staring at them. A crowd was running, and we turned a corner, and there was a large truck with the back open. Jackboot soldiers were tossing loaves of bread. The people grabbed and scrambled, and we munched our cheeses, watching. I was fascinated. I didn't know that bread could be given. So we walked on, and we came to another crowd of people gathered around something on the sidewalk. "Don't," Yuri said to me, but I did. I squeezed my way to the front. There was a man in a long black coat, on his hands and knees, and he had a long gray beard, and beside him was a bucket of water. And he was dipping his beard into the water and scrubbing the sidewalk with his beard. A pair of jackboot soldiers stood above him, laughing. Some of the people were laughing too. The man in black was not laughing. I came back to Yuri and I tugged on his arm. "Come see! There's a man cleaning the sidewalk with his beard!" Yuri smacked my head. "You are stupid!" He pulled me away. Farther on, we saw something else that made us stop. 2 soldiers were standing in front of another bearded man in black. One of the soldiers had a pair of scissors, and he was cutting off the man's beard and the black hair that came curling down over his ears. I ran up to the soldiers. "Bring him to our place," I said. "We live in a barber shop. He can sit in our red chair, and we have bottles of hair tonic for him." The soldier just stared at me. Yuri grabbed me, and he said words to them that I could not understand. The soldiers laughed, and Yuri yanked me away. Side note here, Yuri can speak German. We heard the soldiers laughing behind us, and I thought, men in beards and long black coats do not laugh. Later that day, we sat on our beds eating chocolates bubkas. Yuri said, "You stay away from the jackboots." "But they smile." "No, they hate you." I laughed. "They don't hate me. They say very good little gypsy, and they salute me. I want to be a jackboot." He smacked me in the face, and my bubka went flying. "You're not a jackboot. You'll never be a jackboot. You are what you are. I gathered up my babka, and still, I wanted to be right about something. But the people love the tanks, I said. They ran to see them. They ran to watch them. No, they hate the tanks. Yeah, but somebody threw a flower, Yuri. He gave a snort. That man is a coward. If the jackboots say kiss the tanks behind, some people will do it. I laughed, thinking about a tank's behind. As I lay in bed that night, Yuri's voice came through the darkness. Hey, you need a name. I have one. No, a real one. Why? I doubted him. You should have one, that's all. I want to know what to call you. Just call me stupid. He laughed. You don't remember what your parents call you? I don't remember my parents. We were silent. I moved my fingertip over my yellow stone. I remembered a booming laugh. And I remembered some bright colors. I remember the smell of horse and the taste of something sweet. I remember riding someone's shoulder, and I remember hair glittering in the firelight. At last, Yuri's voice came again. I had a little brother, you know. Is he dead, Yuri? I think so. He must be. Did he have a name? His name was Yosef. Was he little like me? Yes, he was, and he was growing fast. Yuri, do you remember your parents? Yes, but less and less. And I asked in the darkness, Yuri, do you remember riding on a shoulder? No answer came. I closed my eyes and I thought over and over but Yuri's words. You are what you are. Which is what? I wondered. In my mind, I saw the man in black scrubbing the sidewalk with his beard, and the other man and the laughing soldiers with the scissors, snip, snip, and the hair falling to the sidewalk, black hair falling. My eyes popped open, though in the blackness there was nothing to see. They're Jews! I blurted out, and Yuri snorted. Huh, who says you are stupid? That's the end of chapter 6.